With 50 years, 90 million albums sold, an almost endless lineup change, and a sound that's instantly recognizable, this commentary will be a trimmed up, condensed timeline of this band's journey. They are, of course, Earth, Wind, and Fire. Formed by Maurice White, Wade Flemons, and Don Whitehead in 1967, the Salty Peppers were a songwriting team that wrote not only songs, but commercials in the Chicago area. They eventually landed a contract with Capitol Records and achieved marginal success with the single titled La La Time. In 1970, Maurice moved to LA and began reforming the band and also changed the name to Earth, Wind, and Fire based on his astrological sign Sagittarius, whose elements are earth, air, and fire. This new band would eventually have a 10-man lineup. 1971, the band's self-titled album would produce a Billboard Top Soul Albums chart position of number 24 and was certified gold in France. Lester Bangs of Rolling Stone said of this debut album that it had a, quote, heavy sly influence and the smooth harmonies of the Fifth Dimension. Bob Talbert of the Detroit Free Press wrote, "I'm not sure what to call this group. Afro, gospel, jazz, blues, rock? Must there be a label?" This all makes sense, since some of their influences were Stevie Wonder, the Isley Brothers, Ramsey Lewis, and Sly and the Family Stone. In 1971, Earth, Wind & Fire supplied the entire soundtrack to a Melvin Van Peebles film, and the soundtrack reached number 13 on the Billboard R&B charts. In November of 1971, they released their second album titled The Need of Love, which reached number 35 on the Hot Soul Albums chart, and also garnered a charting single with I Think About Loving You reaching number 44 on the Billboard Hot Soul Songs chart. While becoming popular on college campuses, the band began breaking apart again in 1972, and Maurice and his brother Verdine, the only original member left, began reforming the band. This newly created lineup would eventually perform at New York's Rockefeller Center, and would then meet Columbia's president at the time, Clive Davis. Davis was impressed with the band and bought their contract from Warner Brothers. With a new lineup and a new contract, the band's debut album on Columbia Records reached number 15 on the American Top Soul Albums chart and number 9 on England's Top British Soul Albums chart, Bluest Soul. The album also had a single called Mom, which reached number 39 on the Cashbox Top R&B Singles chart. This album would later inspire the hip-hop artist Nas and the British singer Gabriel. During this period, another lineup change began, and another album was in the making. Head to the Sky, Earth, Wind & Fire's fourth studio album, was released in May of 1972 and reached number 2 on the Billboard's Top Soul Albums charts, number 27 on the Billboard Top 200 chart, and was certified platinum by the RIAA. This album garnered 2 charting singles, with the song Evil reaching number 19 on the Adult Contemporary charts, and number 25 on the Hot Soul Songs chart, and the song Keep Your Head to the Sky reaching number 23 on the Hot Soul Songs chart. They then recorded their follow-up album, Open Our Eyes, recorded at the Caribou Ranch studio in Colorado and released in March of 1974. Open Our Eyes reached number 1 on the Top Soul Albums chart, number 15 on the Billboard 200 chart, and was certified platinum. The album also produced 3 charting singles, with Mighty Mighty reaching number 4 on the Hot Soul Songs chart, number 29 on the Hot 100 chart. Kalimba's Story reached number 6 on the Hot Soul Songs chart, and Devotion reached number 23 on the Hot Soul Songs chart and number 33 on the Billboard Hot 100. In April of 1974, Earth, Wind & Fire performed at a rock festival called California Jams in front of 200,000 people, and it would later be televised on ABC in May of that same year. In September of 1974, a compilation double album titled Another Time was released on Warner Brothers. It was made up of songs from their first 2 albums and got to number 29 on the Top Soul Albums charts. The band then collaborated with an artist that had inspired them, the legendary jazz pianist and radio personality Ramsey Lewis. They worked on his album Sun Goddess, which would reach number 1 on the Top Soul Albums chart, number 12 on the Billboard Top 200 chart. Its title track reached number 20 on the Hot Soul Songs chart. Sun Goddess was certified gold. In 1975, Earth, Wind & Fire was slated to record the soundtrack to a movie called That's the Way of the World. But after seeing the film, they felt it might be a flop, so they decided to release the soundtrack ahead of the premiere. And this ended up being a wise decision, as the album went on to become number one on both the Billboard 200 and the Billboard Top Soul charts. This album produced the popular song Shining Star, which went on to become number one on both the Billboard Hot 100 and Billboard Hot Soul single chart, and helped make Earth, Wind & Fire the first black act to top both the album and singles charts, as well as winning them a Grammy. The second single from the soundtrack also charted well, reaching number 5 on the Billboard Hot Souls chart and number 12 on the Hot 100 charts. That's the Way of the World was certified platinum. In 1975, following their first European tour, the band released a double LP mostly of concert material called Gratitude. It rose to number one on both the Billboard 200 and the Top Soul Albums charts, and the LP featured the hit Sing a Song, which was number one on the Billboard Hot Souls chart and number 5 on the Hot 100 chart. In 1976, they released Spirit, which achieved double platinum and had several charting singles. Music Week commented on the album saying, quote, "With a more spiritual, ethereal feel than the 6 albums they had already cut to that point, it really makes a turning point in their career and is crammed with excellent tunes." One of these hits was Getaway, which reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot Souls chart and number 12 on the Hot 100 and Dance Club play charts. It has all the energetic elements of funk, disco, jazz, and soul combined. It was during this period that their live shows began to feature pyrotechnics, magic, lasers, and productions such as levitating guitars and flying pyramids. Stage magician Doug Henning and his then assistant David Copperfield appeared at many of these shows. A short 7 years into Earth, Wind & Fire in 1977, they released their triple platinum, Grammy-winning album All in All. This album contained 3 charting singles with Fantasy, and it was nominated for a Grammy, Running, winning a Grammy, and Serpentine Fire reaching number 1 on the Billboard Hot Soul Songs chart. Shortly after this release, Earth, Wind & Fire appeared in a musical special on ABC hosted by Natalie Cole, and also appeared in the 1978 feature film Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which also featured artists such as Peter Frampton, the Bee Gees, Steve Martin, Aerosmith, Alice Cooper, and George Burns. While the film didn't do well, the soundtrack contained Earth, Wind & Fire's cover of the Beatles song Gotta Get You Into My Life. This reached number 1 and won them a Grammy, and the soundtrack was certified platinum. 1978 also produced the release of the album The Best of Earth, Wind & Fire Volume 1. This LP ended up being certified quintuple platinum. That's 5 million copies. It contains the famous song September. Stick around to the end of the video, there's a interesting tidbit about that song. 1979 brought about their 9th studio album, I Am, which reached number 1 on the Soul Albums chart, number 3 on the Hot 200, and was certified double platinum. It featured 2 charting hits, Boogie Wonderland and After the Love Has Gone, another easily recognizable song, and that one won a Grammy. These guys just were constantly recording these huge hits. In 1980, Earth, Wind & Fire released a double album titled Faces, which had 3 charting singles, Let Me Talk, You, and Love Goes On, and was certified gold. And in 2007, an interview with Maurice White, he named Faces as his favorite album. With the rise of the new electronic sound that was changing the music scene, Earth, Wind & Fire revamped their music by adding the electronic sounds and feel to the 1981 release Autumn. This certified platinum album featured the hits Let's Groove, I've Had Enough, and the Grammy-winning single Wanna Be With You. In 1983, they released the gold album Powerlight, which featured the singles Fall in Love With Me and Side by Side. 1983 also had Earth, Wind & Fire contributing to the animated film Rock and Rule with the song Dance, Dance, Dance. This film also featured Debbie Harry, Lou Reed, and Cheap Trick, and has become a cult classic. This same year, they released their 13th album, Electric Universe. It was another evolution in the Earth, Wind & Fire sound with the stylings of new wave and synth pop, but still maintained their signature vocals, and it featured 2 charting singles, Magnetic and Touch. After 13 albums, founder Maurice White decided to put Earth, Wind & Fire on pause, and in 1984, pursued a solo career, releasing 2 charting singles and also producing projects for Barbra Streisand and Neil Diamond. During this same period, members Philip Bailey and Ralph Johnson also worked on side projects, with Bailey releasing 2 solo albums and winning a Grammy for the gospel LP Triumph, and working on recordings with Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles. Ralph Johnson produced the Temptations album Truly for You, all of the 4. A few years later, in 1987, Earth, Wind & Fire reunited, revamped, and recorded the gold album Touch the World, featuring the single Symptom of Survival, which reached number 1 on the R&B and dance charts, and number 3 on the R&B and hip-hop charts. In 1988, they released the gold album Best of Earth, Wind & Fire Volume 2. In 1990, they released their 15th studio album, Heritage. Also in 1990, Earth, Wind & Fire appeared on a compilation album titled Music Speaks Louder Than Words, with artists like Cyndi Lauper, Patti LaBelle, and Anne Murray. Earth, Wind & Fire released another compilation album titled Eternal Dance in 92, which was their first box set. And then in 93, they released their 16th album, Millennium, on Warner Brothers. It charted on several Billboard charts and was certified gold in Japan. In November of that same year, they performed at the 20th anniversary of the American Music Awards. In 1994, they were inducted into the NAACP Image Hall of Fame, and in 1995, they received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. In 1997, they released the album In the Name of Love on Rhino Records, and in 1998, they appeared on Sons of Man's debut album, The Last Shall Be First. In 1999, they were on the soundtrack for the animated sitcom The PJs. Also in 1999, they released another compilation titled The Ultimate Collection. The year 2000 saw Earth, Wind & Fire inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They also worked with Wyclef Jean on his second album, performed for the King of Morocco, and for Presidents Clinton and Obama. A biographical documentary titled Shining Stars, the official story of Earth, Wind & Fire, was released in 2001. In 2002, Earth, Wind & Fire performed at the Winter Olympics, were awarded the ASCAP Rhythm and Soul Heritage Award, and received a BET Lifetime Achievement Award. Also in 2002, they released another compilation album called The Essential Earth, Wind & Fire, which was certified gold. A live album of their 1980 performance in Brazil was released that same year. Earth, Wind & Fire released The Promise in 2003, and it charted on the Billboard R&B and hip-hop charts and the top independent albums charts. Also that year, they were inducted into Hollywood's Rock Walk and into the Vocal Group Hall of Fame. In 2004, they appeared on the tribute album Power of Soul, a tribute to Jimi Hendrix, covering his song Voodoo Child. 2004 also saw Earth, Wind & Fire being honored at the first Grammy Jam, performing on Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve, and in 2005 at the pre-game show for Super Bowl 34. During 2004 and 2005, Earth, Wind & Fire toured with Chicago. A DVD of their performance at the Greek Theater titled Chicago and Earth, Wind & Fire Live at the Greek Theater was created and would go on to be certified platinum. Earth, Wind & Fire released Illumination, their 19th album, in 2005. That's a lot of albums. It featured will.i.am from Black Eyed Peas, Big Boy from Outkast, Kelly Rowland, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, Kenny G, Brian McKnight, and others. And in 2008, they were inducted into the Munich Olympic Walk of Stars. Earth, Wind & Fire released their first album in 8 years in 2013 with Now, Then, and Forever on Legacy Recording Sony Music. This was the first recording without founding member Maurice White's musical contribution, and it ended up being certified gold in the UK. In October of 2014, they released their 21st album and first ever holiday album titled Holiday. In 2021, they released a new single, You Want My Love, which reached the top 10 on the Billboard Adult R&B chart for the first time in 28 years. With 22 albums, multiple compilations and soundtracks, and over 50 years of making hits, Earth, Wind & Fire hasn't slowed down, with tour dates throughout 2024 with Chicago and Lionel Richie. Earth, Wind & Fire has said that their mission is to spread hope, love, and respect, and to render service to humanity, which you can totally hear in their songs. They have lived clean lives, healthy lives, and they still rehearse before every show. It's something you don't hear about a lot of these massive bands. Verdine White, co-founder and brother of Maurice White, left a 4-year scholarship at a music conservatory to join Earth, Wind, and Fire. And he said that it's a great example of not letting your schooling interfere with your education. Maurice said, quote, "My particular function here is to take the best of each individual and feature that." September was originally released as a single, not on an album. It first appeared on an album with the release of The Best of Earth, Wind, and Fire Volume 1. Of the lyric, Body Ya, in September, Maurice White said, quote, "Never let the lyric get in way of the groove." Some real quick stats for you. Earth, Wind & Fire had 32 top 100 hits, 7 top 10 albums, 6 Grammys, over 90 million albums sold, and 8 number ones. And they're still going. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was super condensed. This band has so much in its history. Please share your thoughts and stories about Earth, Wind & Fire with us, and hit that like button. Thanks for watching.